What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-hosts, Eric Wilson and Will Cohen. And last night, we saw something magical. We saw the New York Rangers get off to a nice win over the Chicago Blackhawks, but we also saw the debut of Brennan Othmann, a player that I have been begging for the Rangers to call up for a very long time. I've been super excited to see the debut of Brennan Othmann, and it was a beautiful debut. He played some great hockey last night. 5 shots on goal, 3 hits. He looked awesome. We're going to go ahead and react to it and discuss why we think he could be the solution to the problems for the Rangers on the right wing. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts below in the comment section. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Rangers. But without further ado, Eric, I'll start with you. How are you doing today, my friend? And what's your reaction to Brennan Othmann's NHL debut?
I'm doing great, Anthony. Thank you for asking. And my feelings towards the Othmann call-up have been very up and down. It's been like a roller coaster of emotion across the last 48 hours. When I saw the announcement he was called up, I was very excited right away. You know, the last video we made just announcing it, discussing what it could possibly mean for the Rangers. You know, emotions were high. I was very pleased by it. I was very satisfied. But then yesterday morning, you see at practice, he's skating with the fourth line. And I'm like, well, then what was the point of calling him up if he's just going to be on the fourth line? But then towards the end of the game in the third period, he's getting looks at on the first line with Kreider and Zibanejad. So now all of a sudden I'm excited again. I think when you look at the situation as a whole, he had a great first game in the NHL. He didn't record any points, but he came very close to it, had a lot of shots on net. He's getting looks at on the first line, which it took Lafreniere and Kakko about 5 seasons to get any type of look up in the top 6 there. So that's a good sign to see. And then you consider the whole money problem going on. The Rangers might want to consider keeping him around. So there's a lot to break down on it. But as of right now, it gets 2 thumbs up from me.
2 thumbs up from me too. Before I kick it off to you, Will, I will just say I didn't get to give my take on Brennan Othmann being elevated because I wasn't able to make an appearance on the channel. But I will say I know you guys can vouch for me. My reaction in our group chat was I'm not worried about him starting off on the fourth line. I trust Peter Laviolette to do this thing the right way. I had zero concerns. I thought as soon as they brought him up, even if he starts off down in the bottom 6, I know that Peter Laviolette is going to handle it properly, move him up into the top 6. And that's what I said in the chat. And that's what we're seeing now. So Peter Laviolette, he's the truth. I believe in him. But Will, how are you doing today, my friend? And how do you feel about Brennan Othmann's debut?
I'm doing great. Team USA is winning 4-2 in the gold medal game over Sweden right now, a little bit under 7 minutes to go now. But I was very pleased with Brennan Othmann's game. He almost scored a goal yesterday. He was around the net a lot. That Nick Bonino wraparound, he almost put it. Mrazek kicked it out, and Othmann was right there. He just couldn't get his stick on it. But he played really great, and I'm very excited to see how he's going to help this Rangers team in his career.
Yeah, so let's react to last night's game before we talk about like long term what we're gonna see from him, because we have some expectations for him and we'll dive into that. But let's just react to last night's game first and foremost, Eric. And what are some things that really stood out to you? Because I'll go ahead and say one of mine. I love what Will just mentioned, how he was always around the net, always getting involved. Again, the 5 shots on goal is great. He led the Rangers with shots on goal. I like that he came into the NHL for the first time, just played with aggression. Like he just played aggressively and was hungry and looked ready for prime time. And my favorite aspect of his game was his physicality. The 3 hits, he had one up, gets the boards. It was a dirty one. It was nice. You really like to see that sandpaper. And so, Eric, what really stood out for you from Brennan Othmann's debut performance?
You kind of took the main word I was going to say right out of my mouth. It was just the level of aggression that he brought. I know ever since he was called up leading up to the game, he had a lot of quotes that we saw about how he was nervous. It was his first time playing in the NHL. And, it's understandable. That first shift you take out there, the nerves are going to be high and it's going to be a little scary out there. But I feel like after that first shift that he had, which wasn't even bad, he kind of just got comfortable right away, and he wasn't afraid to try to make an impact on the ice. I know even Peter Laviolette had a quote following the game where he was like, I noticed him every single time he was out on the ice. If the puck was there, he wasn't afraid to go after it. If he had it, he wasn't, too careful and trying to pass it away. If he had the chance to take a shot, he would take it. He had 5 shots on net last night, the most out of anyone playing in the entire game right there. So just that sign of confidence and the level of aggression that he's taking to the game. I think if he was playing with anyone else other than Nick Bonino as a center for the extended portion of the game, he probably would have gotten on the score sheet. He played so well that, like I said before, Laviolette did give him a few looks with Kreider and Zibanejad. That infamous open spot right there on the first line right wing. He had a few looks at it. It wasn't for a lot of time, just a few shifts there in the third. But overall, the level of aggression he had, I think, is the best way to put it. Just being confident with the puck and not being afraid to try to make some sort of offensive push to get onto the score sheet.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you there. Again, I really loved his aggression on both ends of the ice, like in the offensive end, trying to get some shots up, trying to make something happen. But again, like I said, the physicality that he brought defensively, I thought he brought a great presence down there on that fourth line. So, Will, what stood out to you from Brennan Othmann's debut?
I think what stood out to me, and I mentioned this earlier when you asked me how I was doing, I think it was his getting to the net. And when you have, if he does end up playing with the guys like Mika Zibanejad or Chris Kreider, obviously you do have a guy like Chris Kreider who can go to the front of the net, but it allows him to take more shots. Mika Zibanejad takes a lot of shots, rebounds, and Brennan Othmann will be right there. I really like that from him. The Rangers need a lot more guys like that. In the playoffs last year, they struggled with that. They needed those dirty goals, those rebound, live in the crease pucks that were just bouncing around, and Brennan Othmann brings a lot of that. So that's what I liked from his game yesterday, was just getting to the front of the net and then being aggressive when he got to the front of the net as well.
Yeah, the aggression, I think that's really the resounding theme from last night's game from Brennan Othmann, just the way that he played aggressively and I think fearlessly. You'll see young players sometimes, it takes them a little bit to adjust to the NHL game. Maybe they're not, fully in tune with it, fully up to speed with it. It's faster than it is in the AHL, but it didn't seem that way with Brennan Othmann. Like, he hit the ground running, he got onto the ice, and he looked like he had been there for a while. And I think that's really impressive. Again, he was going up against the Blackhawks, not a very good NHL team. Could be compared to many AHL teams if you really wanted to disrespect them. So we'll see what Brennan Othmann really has when he goes up against some more formidable competition, but a really solid first outing. But what does this mean for him long term, Eric? Let's talk about it, because as Will just mentioned, maybe elevates his game even further when he goes up onto that first line, starts playing alongside guys like Zibanejad, Kreider. What are your expectations for him, Eric? Do you think that he's moving up soon? Do you think that they're going to continue to work him down in the bottom six, move him up to the top six as soon as possible? And really, what's your long-term outlook for him for the rest of this season?
I think that what we're seeing right now is a little bit of a test run because, yeah, we're talking about how good he looked and everything, but it was just his debut. It was one game, and one game, and as much as we did enjoy how he looked out there on the ice, he still didn't find the score sheet. He didn't record a point, but fourth line, it's kind of hard to break down with just such a small sample size right here. And the Tyler Pitlick injury was kind of just Othmann's entrance into the NHL. Pitlick's out week to week, but I've also seen rumors and rumblings out there on the internet that the Rangers are expecting Philip Hedl to be back as soon as the All-Star break at the end of this month. Capo Caco already skating with the team in a red no contact jersey, but again, that's all speculation. We don't know when they're going to come back, but for the time being, it's kind of like Brennan Othmann is on like a little bit of an NHL free trial right now, where he has a few weeks to show his worth and kind of just prove to the Rangers if he's good enough to stay long term or not. Because with the trade deadline coming up so quickly, I believe it's March 8th this season, the Rangers don't have a lot of time to figure out who and what they're going to need to go out and acquire at that deadline. We know the right wing is a problem. We know that with Hedl out, the center depth is a problem. And even with Braden Schneider looking a little bit shaky this season, they could totally use another depth defender right there. But I just think overall, after one game, Othmann kind of showed that he can play very well on that fourth line. He'll probably, over the course of the next few games, continue to get a few shifts up there on that first line with Kreider and Zibanejad, kind of just Laviolette testing out to see if they can connect, which in my opinion, I think they will. You look at the type of player that Othmann is. He's more of a playmaker type of guy. Yes, he has an elite shot, but you look at all of his points that he's gotten so far this season, most of them are assists. He has 23 points with the Wolfpack so far, and of those 23, 14 of them are assists. So you look at the way that that first line is formed with Kreider and Zibanejad, both primarily being goal scorers. I think a player like Othmann would kind of fit on that line perfectly, kind of like how Panarin might have if he were on the right side right there. But I think we're just seeing the beginning of this little test run right here. Othmann isn't going to be receiving a lot of time in that top six, but he will receive a few shifts per game. I know tomorrow night the Rangers play another weaker opponent in Montreal, I believe it is, before they go on and take on like the third best team in the league in Vancouver. So it'll be interesting to see how Othmann performs against both of those teams. Another weaker opponent compared to some of the best right there. But that's definitely my expectations for him. Most bottom six and just a little sprinkle of top six mixed in there.
Yeah, and before I dive back into the Othmann analysis, you did just mention Artemi Panarin there. The bread man is having a breadcrumb. So shout out to you, Artemi Panarin. Congratulations on your forthcoming child. That's why he won't be in the All-Star game. Figured I'd just give him a shout out there. Igor Shesterkin will be in the All-Star game instead, but very excited for Artemi. But Will, what is your take on it? What's your season outlook for Brennan Othmann throughout the rest of the year?
When me and Eric were recording on, I think it was Wednesday, I said I didn't think he was going to be up here for a lot of the season. I thought he was going to get sent back down because maybe I thought the
classic Will. He usually unfreezes by now. There you go.
Dude, my whole entire internet cut out. I'm sorry about that. That usually never happens. But I thought that they were gonna trade for a guy that's in the one right winger spot. And now that Brennan Othmann is playing how he was, I know it's one game, but if he continues to play that way, that could be their solution right there. And then all they have to do is get a third line center and maybe a defenseman. Because obviously Braden Schneider is struggling a little bit, but I think for right now, as he's up, he's only probably going to play in the bottom six. I know Molly Walker said yesterday a lot of people were very upset with them saying he was on the fourth line, but it was kind of like there really wasn't a name. It's not really a line. He just kind of threw him down there, let him play his natural position. But I think Othmann will get a little bit more run. Like Eric said, he'll probably get sprinkled up into the first line a little bit more, but it probably won't be anything permanent. But I'm really happy with how he was playing, and I think depending on when Hedl comes back, depending on when Kakko comes back, he'll definitely remain in the lineup. But who knows what will happen with him once they come back? I have a sense that they're probably going to send him down just so he can get more run on a top line in Hartford than just being on the third or fourth line, getting 12 minutes of ice time a game. But I'm excited to see what will happen when that time comes.
Me too. I wonder if this is going to be permanent, though, because I know that we're talking about it as though it is going to be permanent. Maybe Peter Laviolette has something else in mind. Maybe he just plans on making this a short stay in the NHL for Brennan Othmann, getting his toes wet and then sending him back down to the AHL for the rest of the season to continue to develop there. I think that now is the time to bring him up. I mean, they had a lot of injuries. They didn't really have much of a choice. Plus, they were going up against Chicago, so that's a pretty good way to get him introduced to the NHL game against a weaker opponent. I thought that it all made sense, and I liked what Peter Laviolette did here. But then again, you think about it long term. Is this, young rookie guy? Is this who we want kind of manning the first line come postseason? And I think that's something that Peter Laviolette's going to have to weigh the pros and cons of that possibility. Because once you get into the Stanley Cup playoffs, I mean, things are going to reach another level of intensity that, you would hope Brennan Othmann is ready for by then, but he might not be. And I think that's a cause for concern to keep in mind. Eric, what is your take on that? Do you think that this might be, in Peter Laviolette's mind, like a short stay? Like this is kind of something that he has like an end game for it, like this, it's going to end by this day and then he's going to get sent back down to the AHL? Or do you think that Brennan Othmann is here to stay? If he continues to play well, they're going to keep him permanently for the rest of the season?
I don't think that Laviolette has an answer to the situation right now. I think we're kind of just witnessing an experiment right now where with the amount of injuries that have been going on and the way that he's been succeeding down in the AHL, it kind of just created like the perfect storm where the Rangers could give him like a few games to just prove himself without really causing any harm to the Rangers' success or his personal development or anything. And once Hedl and Kakko come back, and Pitlick, I guess, too, that's kind of like the deadline right there where depending on how Othmann has played over the stretch of however many games that would be, Laviolette will then make the choice of being like, thanks for showing us what you're made of, Othmann. Now come try again next year. Or that's when he'll say, all right, you've really impressed us over these last 6 or 7 games. You're here to stay, help us in the playoffs. So I do think it is kind of, we got to wait and see how he performs. Very good debut. I think it'll all come down to the next stretch of games, as well as wherever the timetable of these 3 players' recovery lasts. Because if the Rangers don't have players to play, Othmann's going to have to stay up here. But if he's looked average at best, and all of a sudden Philip Hedl comes back and he's ready to go, and the Rangers are going to go out and trade for a new winger, then at that point, yeah, Othmann, go finish developing, and we'll see you next season. I think it's just going to come down entirely to that. I don't think there's a set plan at all.
Yeah, and what do you think about it, Will? Do you think that this that Brennan Othmann showing up now in the pros, do you think that this would maybe give Chris Drury second thoughts about trading any assets for a potential new addition to the team? Do you think that this is his new addition in his eyes, like this is the solution? Or do you think that this is just getting a guy developed? Meanwhile, we'll wait and see and probably still try to acquire somebody down the road?
I think it's just trying to get somebody developed, let him get his feet wet, and then probably still trade for a guy, probably still trade for a right winger at the deadline. I think Othmann's very young, and obviously it is one game. I mean, he did look very good in that one game, but if he just plays average, like Eric said, they're probably going to go out and trade for somebody. And I think that's the case anyway. They probably, like I said on Wednesday, they probably want somebody with a little bit of more experience in the playoffs. Let him finish his development down the AHL. Let him play in those playoffs, and then next year he'll definitely be a mainstay, I think. But I don't think it's anything permanent right now. But I mean, if worse comes to worse and it is permanent, let's say Drury's like, all right, this guy's, and he does play out of his mind, and Drury's like, oh yeah, this kid's insane. This is what we want on the first line. I think it makes the deadline a lot more easier at that point.
I think I just wanted to say really quick. I mean, you look at it like this, 2 months from now, if Othmann's playing pretty solid, but then at the same time, you have a guy, let's just say, I'll throw out Vladimir Tarasenko's name out there, who's a relatively cheap option to afford at the deadline. Do you want a rookie with no playoff experience or a veteran who's won a Stanley Cup? As much as I would love Othmann, there's just still options out there that might be better for just the betterment of the team.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going earlier, and so that's where I agree with you. I still think that if the Rangers have an opportunity to acquire some talent, some established talent for that first line ahead of the playoff push, they have to still make the move. I don't think that Brennan Othmann changes much of anything. In my mind, he's kind of like playing with house money, right? Like, okay, so we have extra talent. We know that he is capable of giving us some games in the NHL this season if we need him to. Let's just keep him in our back pocket and let's pull him out when we need to. Continue to develop him in the AHL. And I think that by the end of the year, he'll probably be a capable enough player to take on a full-time role in the NHL, but we don't need him to, so let's not force him to. That's kind of my mindset on Brennan Othmann, and I know that's maybe surprising since I've been a huge advocate for bringing Othmann up into the NHL all season long, and I'm happy that he's getting a chance, but really that's what I wanted. I just wanted him to get his chance, just to show that he does have all of that talent, and let's see how he continues to progress and where he is by season's end.
Yeah, and I think the reason we're being so cautious about this situation right now is because heading into the season, we were huge on it. We were like, we want Othmann. He's going to be great. We want him right now. But we didn't really expect the Rangers to be as good as they are. We were thinking, oh, another situation like last year, we'll make the playoffs, maybe win a round or two and hope for the cup. But right now, the Rangers are in a place where they are legitimate Stanley Cup contenders. And, taking a guy like Brennan Othmann, who has no playoff experience, is only played in one game now, and kind of just assuming that he could be the piece to fix the Rangers, that might be playing a little too risky, might be flying a little too close to the sun right there. And I think the Rangers, if they really do want to bring home the Stanley Cup this season, might need to kind of table Othmann, let him have his fun right now, table him for next season, and just bring in some Stanley Cup caliber content right away.
I agree. And it's first and foremost too soon to make any decisions on Brennan Othmann. We saw one game of him. It was an impressive performance to start off his NHL career, but let's see how he continues to play. Will, before we wrap up, what's your season outlook for Brennan Othmann here? You know, like all the things that we mentioned in terms of maybe making a move, maybe not. Do you think that he could be relied on in the postseason if the Rangers decided to go that route? Just kind of what are your wrap-up thoughts before we end this episode?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. I think he could be relied on in the postseason, maybe in like a bottom 6 role. I don't think it's going to be in a top 6 role. I do think come playoff time, he probably will not be up with the NHL roster. He'll probably be back down. But if at all he is still up here, it's probably going to be in a third line role in the postseason, which I don't think and there's anything wrong with that. I think he actually fits that role, would fit that role very well. I mean, I think once Hedl comes back, he's probably going to be the third line center, and the line of Cooley, Hedl, and Othmann would be awesome come playoff time. I mean, you got scoring right there. They can score, and they have 2 players that play like how you want to in the playoffs, or how you want players to in the playoffs. But I do think that he's probably going to be back down in the AHL, and the Rangers are probably going to be trading for somebody. But if worse comes to worse and he's playing really good and he is here on the roster, then I'd be very happy with that, and I'd be very excited to see how his game translates to the playoffs.
Me too. Eric, any wrap-up thoughts, comments, questions, concerns about Brennan Othmann before we end this episode?
I would just say that I'm excited to see what the next few weeks bring. Pitlick out week to week. So however long we see Brennan Othmann, it's definitely going to extend much farther than just that one debut against the Blackhawks. Like I said earlier, we got another I'm going to knock on wood again, somewhat easy opponent, because I know Montreal, after I say that's going to come in and just blow the Rangers out. But we'll see them play up against a few lesser opponents, a few top of the league teams as well. And I'm just excited to see him play. Looks great, and we'll see what the future brings with him.
I can't wait, man. I want more Brennan Othmann content, more Brennan Othmann games. I can't wait to continue to watch him play for our New York Rangers. It's going to be really exciting. Again, don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. It's one game, but I've always been super confident in the kid. I've always been very high on him. I wanted him to get some NHL playing time at some point this season. Again, I know that we've had some debates before and said, oh, he shouldn't get any playing time at all this year. Let him develop. I always thought that was silly. He had to play at some point this year. Now he's playing well. Hopefully he continues to do that. Maybe he turns into the next superstar for the New York Rangers. That's what we're hoping for. But that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Rangers. Without further ado, we'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one. And
let's go Rangers.